Captain Han checked his uniform one last time before stepping onto the bridge of the diplomatic vessel, Hala. Today was important, the first official meeting between humans and the Valari Confederacy. After decades of space exploration, humanity had finally been invited to meet the dominant power in this sector of the galaxy. "Status report," Han said, his voice steady despite his nerves. Lieutenant June turned from his console. "All systems normal, Captain. We will dock with the Valari station in 20 minutes. Han nodded. "And Dr. Nari?" "In the lab, finishing her preparations," June replied. Han walked to the large viewport. Stars stretched out before him, and in the distance, he could see their destination. A massive space station shaped like a wheel with spokes extending from a central hub. It glowed with blue-green lights, beautiful but alien. "Send for Dr. Nari," Han ordered. "I want a final briefing before we dock." Minutes later, Dr. Nari entered the bridge. She was smaller than most members of the crew, but her intelligence and knowledge of alien biology made her vital to this mission. "Captain," she said with a slight bow, "I've reviewed all available data on the Valari. They are very different from us physically. Their home planet has lower gravity, milder temperatures, and fewer natural dangers than Earth." Han frowned. "What does that mean for us?" "It means they may find us surprising," Nari said carefully. "Our strength, endurance, and resistance to pain might seem unusual to them." "Should we hide these differences?" June asked. Nari shook her head. "They will discover them eventually. Honesty is better for establishing trust." The station grew larger, in the viewport. Han took a deep breath. "Remember the mission. We represent all of humanity. Our goal is peaceful contact and hopefully joining the galactic community." The docking proceeded smoothly. Han led the small delegation through the airlock with June and Nari following close behind. 4 other crew members carried gifts and scientific equipment. They stepped into a large, brightly lit chamber. The air felt thin but breathable. 3 Valari waited for them. Han had seen images, but the reality was still striking. The Valari stood taller than humans, with slender bodies covered in short, pale fur. Their faces featured 4 eyes, 2 large ones for normal vision and 2 smaller ones above that seemed to detect movement. They had no visible ears, but small openings on the sides of their elongated heads served the same purpose. The central Valari stepped forward. "I am Supreme Commander Krex of the Valari Confederacy. Welcome to Station Harmony." Han bowed slightly. "Captain Han of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. We bring greetings from humanity and hope for friendship." The translation devices they wore seemed to work well. Krex's mouth parts moved in what might have been a smile, though it was hard for Han to read alien expressions. "Please follow us to the meeting chamber," Krex said. "We have much to discuss." As they walked through the station's wide corridors, Han noticed other Valari watching them with curious gazes. Some seemed to whisper to each other after the humans passed. The meeting chamber was a large room with a round table. The human delegation sat on one side, the Valari on the other. Servants brought drinks and small food items. "Before we begin, formal talks," Krex said. "Perhaps you could tell us about your species and your worlds." Han nodded to Dr. Nari, who activated a holographic display showing Earth and its colonies. "We evolved on Earth," she explained, "a planet with variable climate, strong gravity, and diverse environments. We have established colonies on Mars, Europa, and several exoplanets in nearby star systems." She continued with basic information about human biology, culture, and technology. The Valari listened closely, occasionally whispering among themselves. When she mentioned Earth's gravity and atmospheric pressure, one of the Valari advisors visibly reacted. "You developed on a world with such conditions?" the advisor asked. "How do you survive?" Nari smiled. "It's normal for us, our bodies evolved to thrive there." The advisor made notes on a transparent tablet, looking troubled. Krex cleared his throat, an oddly human gesture. "Now let us share information about the Confederacy." The meeting continued for hours. Han found the Valari civilization impressive. They controlled hundreds of star systems and had developed technologies far beyond human capabilities. They spoke of peace and cooperation, of cultural exchange and mutual benefit. Yet something felt wrong. Han noticed the Valari watching them closely whenever the humans moved or ate or drank. Their four eyes would widen slightly and they would exchange glances. During a brief recess, Han pulled June and Nari aside. "They're studying us," he whispered, "like we're lab specimens." Nari nodded. "I've noticed. They seem particularly interested in our physical capabilities." "Should we be concerned?" June asked. "Stay alert," Han said. "But remember our mission." When they returned to the table, Krex proposed a toast to new friendships. Han raised his glass along with everyone else. Then, ceremony continued with an exchange of symbolic gifts. A Valari official carried a crystal sculpture to the center of the table, an intricate representation of the Valari homeworld. "This represents our offer of knowledge and partnership," Krex explained. The official suddenly stumbled. The crystal sculpture began to fall from his hands. Without thinking, Han lunged forward. His hand shot out with the quick reflexes developed from years of military training. He caught the sculpture before it could shatter on the floor. The room went silent. Han smiled, thinking he had prevented a diplomatic incident. "No harm done," he said, carefully placing the sculpture on the table. But the Valari were staring at him with all four eyes wide open. Some had backed away from the table. Krex's face had drained of color. "How did you move so quickly?" one advisor asked, voice trembling. Han frowned, confused by their reaction. "Just normal reflexes." Krex and his advisors huddled together, speaking rapidly in their native language, too fast for the translation devices to catch. When Krex turned back, his manner had completely changed. "We will continue this meeting tomorrow. Please return to your ship for now." "Have we offended you somehow?" Han asked. "Not at all," Krex said, but his voice was cold. "We simply need time to prepare the next phase of discussions." The walk back to the airlock was tense. Other Valeri in the corridors now openly stared at the humans, some with expressions that looked like fear. Once aboard their ship, Han called, "An immediate meeting." "Something's wrong," he told his crew. "Dr. Nari, what happened in there?" Nari's face was grim. "I've been reviewing the biological data they shared. The Valari evolved on a world with 1/3 Earth's gravity and no large predators. Their reaction speed is significantly slower than ours. When you caught that sculpture, you moved faster than any Valari could." "So I scared them by being quick?" Han asked. "You demonstrated that humans are physically superior in ways they hadn't anticipated," Nari explained. "To them we might appear as what?" June pressed. "As monsters," Nari said quietly. "Creatures evolved in conditions they would consider a death world." Before Han could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Captain!" the security officer shouted over the comm. "The station has powered weapons systems. They're targeting us." "Prepare for emergency departure," Han ordered. "Break docking clamps and get us out of here." As the ship pulled away from the station, Han watched the first energy beams fire from the Valari weapons. First contact had failed. War had begun. 6 months had passed since the disastrous first contact with the Valari Confederacy. Captain Han stood on the bridge of the battleship Daehan, staring at the tactical display. It showed what remained of humanity's outer defense fleet. Less than 30 ships against over 100 Valari vessels. "Status report," Han ordered, his voice tired but firm. His new second officer, Park, looked up from her console. "Not good, Captain. The Valari have destroyed our defenses around Titan Colony. Civilian evacuation is only at 60%. Han closed his eyes briefly. Another colony about to fall. Another defeat to add to the growing list. "Send the 4th Division to cover the evacuation ships," he said. "We need to buy them more time." The war had gone badly for humanity from the start. Despite their physical advantages, strength, speed, endurance, humans were vastly outnumbered and outgunned by the technologically superior Valari fleet. One by one, the outer colonies had fallen. Han's communication screen lit up. General Kim, Earth's Defense Force commander, appeared on the display. Her face was lined with exhaustion. "Captain Han, we need you at Mars Command immediately," she said without greeting. "The situation has become critical." "I'm in the middle of an operation, General," Han replied. "Titan colony has already fallen," Kim interrupted. "The Volari breached the main dome 20 minutes ago. Focus on getting out as many evacuation ships as possible, then return to Mars. That's an order." The screen went dark. Han's hands tightened into fists. "Relay new orders to all ships," he told Park. "Priority is evacuation coverage. We're not fighting to hold ground anymore." 3 days later, Han walked through the underground corridors of Mars Command. The base had been built deep beneath the planet's surface, shielded from detection and bombardment. It was now humanity's main military headquarters since Earth itself was under blockade. He entered the central command room where General Kim was waiting. Large screens showed the status of human territories across the solar system. Most were flashing red. "Captain," Kim nodded to him. "Thank you for coming." Han saluted. "What's our status?" "Bad and getting worse." Kim gestured to the main screen. "We've lost every colony beyond the asteroid belt. The Volari now control Jupiter and Saturn's moons. At current rates, they'll reach Mars within 2 months. Han studied the display. "And Earth?" "Surrounded but not invaded yet. The defensive grid is holding, but they can't send reinforcements. We're on our own." A side door opened, and 2 people entered the room. Han recognized Dr. Nari, the xenobiologist from the first contact mission. Beside her was Lieutenant June, now wearing a captain's insignia. "You remember Dr. Nari and Captain June?" Kim said. "Captain June now commands the stealth vessel Baekdu." Han nodded to his former lieutenant. "Congratulations on your promotion." June's smile was grim. "Not much to celebrate these days." "I've called you all here because we need a new strategy," General Kim said. "Conventional warfare is failing us. Dr. Nari has been studying Volari biology and technology, looking for weaknesses. Doctor, please share your findings." Nari stepped forward and activated a holographic display. "The Volari have superior technology, but they have certain limitations," she began. "Their bodies evolved on a world with stable climate, minimal predators, and abundant resources. They never needed to adapt to harsh conditions." She showed diagrams of Volari physiology. "They cannot tolerate temperature extremes. Their bones break easily in high gravity. Their lungs cannot filter toxins like ours can." Han leaned forward. "But how does this help us? We can't force them to fight on Earth or Mars." "Perhaps we can," June suggested, "or at least in environments that favor us." General Kim nodded. "That's why I've brought you together. We need unconventional tactics. Captain June has been running stealth reconnaissance missions, gathering intelligence on Volari operations. Captain Han, your experience in direct combat gives you insight into their battle strategies." The meeting continued for hours as they discussed possibilities. None seemed promising enough to turn the tide of war. As they prepared to break for the day, an alarm sounded. A communications officer rushed into the room. "General, a Volari battle group has been detected near Jupiter's orbit. They're heading this way. At least 30 ships." Kim turned to Han. "How soon can the Daihan be ready?" "My crew is on standby. We can launch within the hour," Han replied. "Take your ship and 3 others from the Second Fleet. Delay them as long as possible. We need time to prepare Mars's defenses." Han saluted and turned to leave, but June stopped him. "I'll come with you," he said. "The Baekdu can provide reconnaissance and targeting data. This could be a suicide mission," Han warned. June smiled slightly. "All missions seem like suicide missions these days. The battle near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, was brutal and one-sided. Despite clever tactics and brave fighting, the human ships were overwhelmed by Volari technology. Energy beams cut through their best shields. Precision strikes disabled weapons and engines. On the bridge of the Daihan, Captain Han held onto his command chair as the ship shuddered under another hit. "Damage report," he shouted over the alarms. "Main engines at 12%. Shields failing. Weapon systems offline," Park replied, her console sparking with damaged circuitry. Han looked at the tactical display. Of the 4 ships they had brought, 2 were completely destroyed. Captain June's Baekdu was still operational but taking heavy fire. A decision formed in Han's mind. "All hands, prepare for emergency maneuvers," he ordered. "Navigation, set course for Europa's surface." Park looked at him in shock. "Captain, Europa's surface temperature is negative 170 degrees. The radiation levels are within our ship's tolerance," Han finished. "The Valari won't follow us there. It's too hostile for their systems." He opened a channel to the Baekdu. "Captain June, we're making an emergency landing on Europa. Can you provide cover?" June's face appeared on the screen, his bridge filled with smoke. "We'll do what we can. Good luck, Han." The Daihan dove toward the icy moon, engines struggling. Valari ships fired after them but didn't pursue closely. As Han had predicted, they kept their distance from the harsh environment of the moon. Landing was rough. The ship skidded across ice, systems failing one by one. When they finally stopped, Han ordered an immediate assessment. "Life support is stable," Park reported. "Engine core is intact but damaged. We're stuck here until repairs can be made." Han nodded. "Begin repairs immediately and scan the area. I want to know why the Valari are so reluctant to follow us down. Here." For 3 days, the crew worked to repair their ship while hiding on Europa's frozen surface. The Valari ships remained in orbit, occasionally sending probes but never landing. On the 4th day, while inspecting a damaged section of the hull, Han made a discovery. The Valari weapons had penetrated their armor easily in space, but the sections exposed to Europa's extreme cold showed different damage patterns. He called Dr. Nari on Mars via a secure channel and showed her what he'd found. "The Valari weapons and ships are designed for precision and efficiency," he explained, "but they lack redundancy and durability in harsh conditions. When exposed to extreme cold, their energy weapons become unstable." Nari's eyes widened with understanding. "Their technology reflects their biology, optimized for ideal conditions but vulnerable to extremes." "Exactly," Han said. "And I think I know how we can use that against them." As the repairs neared completion, Han gathered his officers in the ship's conference room. "We've been fighting the Valari on their terms," he told them, "using conventional tactics in space where their technology gives them every advantage, but now we know their weakness." He activated a display showing the solar system. "We need to change the battlefield," he continued. "Draw them into environments where human adaptability gives us the edge. Asteroid fields, radiation belts, gas giant atmospheres, places where their precision fails and our resilience matters." For Decimus, the first time in months, Han felt hope. The Valari might have better technology, but humans had something more valuable: the ability to endure and adapt to the harshest conditions. The tide of war was about to turn. General Kim studied the holographic display in the Mars Command Center. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. Around the table stood her top officers and advisors, including Dr. Nari, who had just finished presenting her latest findings. "So you're saying the Valari have never needed to adapt?" General Kim asked. Dr. Nari nodded. "Their home planet has stable weather, mild gravity, and few natural threats. Their bodies and their technology are built for ideal conditions. They've never had to deal with the kind of harsh environments humans evolved to survive." Captain Han, recently returned from Europa, pointed to the data from his ship's sensors. "We discovered this by accident when we had to land on Europa. Their weapons and ships start to malfunction in extreme cold, radiation, or high pressure. Their military doctrine centers around overwhelming force under optimal conditions," Captain June added. "But they have no experience fighting in environments we can tolerate." General Kim walked slowly around the table, considering the information. Humanity had been losing badly for 6 months. This might be their only chance to turn things around. "Captain Han," she said finally, "I'm giving you command of a special task force. Take the Daihan and 5 other ships. Your mission is to test this theory in combat." Han stood straighter. "What are our targets?" "The Valari mining operation in the asteroid belt would be a good start," Kim replied. "They're extracting resources to build more ships. Disrupt that and you'll slow their advance toward Mars. Han nodded. We'll leave immediately. Captain June, Kim continued, your Baekdu will provide stealth support. Dr. Nari, I want you to go with them. Your knowledge of Valari biology could be crucial. As the meeting ended, Han approached Dr. Nari. Doctor, I need you to help design new tactics based on what we know about Valari limitations. Nari smiled. I already have some ideas, Captain. 5 days later, the human task force approached the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The area was filled with thousands of rocky bodies ranging from small boulders to objects hundreds of kilometers wide. The Valari had established mining operations on several of the larger asteroids. On the bridge of the Daehan, Captain Han watched the tactical display. 6 red dots showed Valari ships guarding the mining stations. They outnumber us, Park observed from her station. But we have the home field advantage, Han replied with a grim smile. Begin Operation Dust Cloud. The human ships split into 3 groups and approached from different directions. Instead of engaging directly, they fired special missiles into nearby smaller asteroids. The explosions created massive clouds of dust and debris. Valari ships are changing formation, June reported from the Baekdu, which remained hidden. They're trying to avoid the debris fields. Just as we predicted, Han said. Their ships are designed for clean space combat. They can't handle micrometeorite impacts like our armored hulls can. The human ships plunged into the dust clouds, using them as cover. The Valari fire became scattered and ineffective as their targeting systems struggled with the interference. Phase 2, Han ordered. Specially designed drones launched from the human ships. They carried powerful electromagnetic pulse generators. Developed based on Dr. Nari's research into Valari technology, the drones detonated near the Valari vessels, not causing physical damage but disrupting their sensitive systems. On the main screen, Han could see the Valari ships drifting, their engines and weapons temporarily disabled. All ships, attack pattern, Delta, he commanded. Target their propulsion systems. The human vessels emerged from the dust clouds and fired precision shots at the vulnerable Valari ships. 2 enemy vessels were disabled immediately. The others managed to restart their systems, but their movements were sluggish. They're retreating, Park announced as the remaining Valari ships began to withdraw. Han shook his head. They're not retreating. They're regrouping. They'll be back. With reinforcements. We need to hit the mining stations now. The task force quickly moved to the largest asteroid, where the main Valari mining operation was located. As they approached, Dr. Nari joined Han on the bridge. Captain, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the battle, she said. The Valari crews were showing signs of extreme stress even before their ships were damaged. Meaning what? Han asked. The dust, the debris, the unpredictable environment. These conditions are traumatic for them, Nari explained. Their psychology isn't built to handle chaos and uncertainty the way humans are. Han considered this new information. So we're not just exploiting technical weaknesses, but psychological ones too. Exactly, Nari nodded. And I have an idea for how to use that against them even more effectively. The attack on the mining station was swift and decisive. Instead of destroying it completely, the human forces damaged the environmental systems, causing temperature fluctuations and atmospheric leaks. When Valari reinforcements arrived hours later, they found the station in a state that was perfectly survivable for humans, but extremely uncomfortable for their own people. The rescue operation became chaotic, as Valari troops struggled with conditions that the human attackers had easily tolerated during their raid. Back on Mars, General Kim received Han's report with growing hope. This confirms our theory, she told her staff. We need to expand these tactics immediately. Prepare all remaining ships for similar operations. Over the next few weeks, human forces launched a series of raids across the solar system. They targeted Valari operations in the radiation belts of Jupiter, the methane storms of Saturn, and the gravity wells of larger moons. They developed new weapons designed to create environmental hazards rather than direct damage. Weapons that turned the battlefield itself against the enemy. The Valari, confused by these new tactics, began to make mistakes. Their neat formations broke down in the face of unpredictable attacks. Their careful battle plans failed when humans proved able to fight effectively in conditions the Volari considered lethal. A month after the first asteroid belt operation, Captain Han stood in General Kim's office on Mars delivering his latest report. "The Volari have pulled back from Jupiter's moons," he said. "They've consolidated their forces in space they consider safe." Kim nodded. "Similar reports are coming in from across the system. They're adapting their strategy, becoming more cautious. But they're still stronger," Han reminded her. "They have more ships, better technology. All we've done is slow them down." "For now," Kim agreed. "But Dr. Nari has been working on something new." She pressed a button on her desk. "Doctor, please, join us." Dr. Nari entered carrying a tablet. Her face showed excitement despite her obvious fatigue. "I've been studying Volari communication intercepts," she said. "Their soldiers and commanders are starting to fear humans. They call us Deathworlders, creatures evolved in conditions they consider unsurvivable." "Fear is good," Han said. "It makes them hesitate. More than that," Nari continued. "I believe we can use this fear against them even more directly. If we can show them just how different we are, how much we can endure compared to them, it might break their will to fight." "You want to scare them into surrendering?" Kim asked. "Essentially, yes," Nari replied. "Psychological warfare targeted at their specific fears about us." Han thought about the possibilities. The Volari weren't just fighting humans. They were fighting their own terror of what humans represented, a species that thrived in conditions they found nightmarish. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Dr. Nari's eyes gleamed with determination. "Something that will show them exactly what Deathworlders are capable of. Something they won't be prepared for." As she outlined her plan, Han felt a new emotion growing inside him. Not just hope, but confidence. For the first time since the war began, humanity had found its advantage. The very planet that had shaped them into tough, adaptable survivors had given them the tools they needed to face this threat. The tide of war wasn't just turning, it was about to become a flood. Captain Han looked at the volunteers gathered in the briefing room of the Daehan. 15 men and women stood at attention, their faces showing determination, despite knowing the risks of the mission ahead. "You all understand this is extremely dangerous," Han said. "There's a good chance we won't come back." A young officer named Min stepped forward. "We all volunteered knowing the risks, Captain. If this can help end the war, it's worth it." Han nodded, feeling pride in his crew. "Dr. Nari will explain the final details of Operation Nightmare." Dr. Nari activated the display screen, showing the massive Volari flagship that orbited Saturn. It was twice the size of any other Volari vessel, serving as both a command center and a symbol of their military power. "The Dominance is our target," she said. "Intelligence from Captain June's stealth missions confirms it carries Supreme Commander Krex and the Volari High Command. Our goal is not to destroy it, but to infiltrate it," she continued, explaining how the team would allow themselves to be captured during an attack on a nearby Volari outpost. Once aboard the Dominance, they would stage what would appear to be a prison break, but was actually a carefully planned display of human abilities. "The Volari now see humans as creatures from a death world," Nari explained. "But they still don't truly understand what that means. We're going to show them." Park raised her hand. "How will we record this demonstration?" "The Volari security systems will do that for us," Nari replied with a slight smile. "Captain June has identified a way to hack into their communication network. Everything captured by their own cameras will be transmitted across their fleet." "What happens after we've shown them what humans can do?" Min asked. Han's expression was grim. "We try to escape for real. The Bekdu will be hiding nearby, ready to extract us if possible." The room was silent as everyone considered the slim chances of survival. Then Min began to laugh softly. "What's funny?" Han asked. "Just thinking about how the Volari will react when they see what we can do," Min replied. "They've been calling us monsters. Maybe it's time we showed them they're right." 3 days later, the mission began. A small human vessel carrying Han and his volunteer team attacked a Volari fuel depot near Saturn. As planned, they fought until surrounded, then surrendered to the Valari forces. The team was transported to the Dominance and placed in a high-security detention area. The cells were designed for Valari prisoners, with environmental controls set to Valari comfort levels. For the humans, the air was thin and cold but not unbearable. Han sat on the floor of his cell, breathing slowly to conserve oxygen. Through the clear barrier, he could see his team in adjacent cells. They all gave small nods, indicating they were ready. A group of Valari guards approached, led by a tall officer whose uniform showed high rank. "I am Security Chief Mex," the officer said through a translator. "Supreme Commander Krex wishes to speak with your leader." Han stood. "That would be me." Two guards entered his cell and attached restraints to his wrists and ankles. They escorted him through long corridors to a large chamber where Supreme Commander Krex waited. Han recognized him immediately from the first contact meeting that had gone so wrong 6 months ago. Krex's 4 eyes studied Han with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. "Captain Han," Krex said, "we meet again under different circumstances. You started this war," Han replied calmly. "We were ready for peace." Krex made a gesture that the translator interpreted as dismissal. "Your kind could never peacefully coexist with civilized species. You are too dangerous, too unpredictable. Because we caught a falling object? Because we can survive conditions you find challenging? Because you are Deathworlders," Krex said, as if it explained everything. "Evolved through violence and struggle. Your very biology makes you a threat to the galaxy." Han shrugged, a human gesture that made the nearby guards tense. "We're just well adapted to our environment as you are to yours." "Your adaptations make you monsters," Krex said. "But soon it won't matter. Your forces are losing this war. Earth will fall within months." Han kept his expression neutral, knowing that everything happening in this room was being recorded. "Perhaps, but you still don't understand what you're fighting." Krex leaned forward. "What don't we understand?" "What it really means to be a Deathworlder," Han answered. "But you're about to find out." At that moment, throughout the detention area, Han's team put their plan into action. The demonstration had begun. In the security control room of the Dominance, Valari officers watched in horror as the human prisoners performed actions they considered impossible. Min dislocated her own thumb to slip out of restraints, then popped it back into place without showing pain. Another team member held his breath for over 3 minutes while submerged in a water tank. 2 others functioned normally in a cell where the temperature had been lowered to freezing. Most disturbing to the Valari was what happened when the guards used their shock weapons, designed to incapacitate through pain. The humans endured levels that would kill a Valari, continuing to fight despite injuries. As planned, Captain June's team had hacked into the ship's communication system. Everything the security cameras recorded was being transmitted to every Valari vessel in the fleet. Meanwhile, in the command chamber, Han acted on cue. He suddenly broke free from his restraints, having gradually weakened them through subtle movements. "This is what humans can do," he told a shocked Krex as guards rushed toward him. "We endure, we adapt, we survive conditions you can't imagine." He allowed himself to be recaptured, having made his point. The real escape would come later after the psychological damage was done. Across the Valari fleet, the impact was immediate and devastating. Soldiers watched the footage in disbelief. Some refused to continue fighting against creatures that could suffer injuries that would kill a Valari and keep going. Others abandoned posts rather than face potential capture by these Deathworlders. On a Valari cruiser near Jupiter, the captain received orders to attack a human outpost. He refused, saying his crew would not fight against unkillable monsters. 3 other ships joined the mutiny. Closer to Earth, a Valari patrol encountered Lieutenant June's fleet of smaller vessels performing what appeared to be suicide missions. The Valari ships retreated rather than engage, having seen the footage from the Dominance. Back on Mars, General Kim received reports of the spreading panic among Valari forces. Entire battle groups were withdrawing from planned attacks. Some ships were even leaving the solar system entirely. It's working better than we hoped, she told her staff. The Valari are breaking under psychological pressure. Dr. Nari, who had remained on Mars, studied the latest Valari communications they had intercepted. They're calling humans the nightmare species now. The footage from the dominance has gone viral throughout their ranks. What about Captain Han and his team? A staff officer asked. Kim's expression became serious. We've received a transmission from the Baekdu. They're attempting extraction now. Aboard the Dominance, alarms blared as the real escape plan began. Captain June's stealth ship had attached itself to an outer airlock, creating a path for Han's team to escape. Not all would make it. Several team members had been injured during their demonstrations. Others stayed behind to ensure their comrades could reach the extraction point. As Han moved through the corridors with the remaining team members, fighting their way toward the airlock, he reflected on the sacrifice they were making. It wasn't just for Earth or the colonies. It was to show the galaxy what humans truly were, not monsters, but survivors who had been shaped by adversity into something remarkable. The psychological warfare hadn't just turned the tide of battle. It had changed the very nature of the conflict. 1 month after Operation Nightmare, General Kim stood at the viewport of Mars Command watching shuttles land in the distance. The red planet's surface was busy with activity as human forces prepared for what might be the most important meeting in their history. Any word from the Baekdu? She asked without turning. Dr. Nari, who stood beside her, checked her tablet. Captain June reports they're on schedule. They'll arrive within the hour. Kim nodded. The rescue mission to extract Captain Han and his team from the Valkyrie flagship had been partially successful. Of the 15 volunteers, 9 had made it back, including Han himself. The others had sacrificed themselves to ensure their comrades' escape. And our guest? Kim asked. Nervous, Nari replied. The environmental adjustments in the meeting chamber are complete, but he still finds our gravity uncomfortable. He'll have to manage, Kim said firmly. This meeting happens on our terms, on our ground. A young officer entered the room and saluted. General, Captain Han's shuttle has landed. Good. Tell him to come directly here. 10 minutes later, Han entered the command center. He walked with a slight limp, still recovering from injuries sustained during the escape. His face showed new scars, but his eyes were clear and determined. Captain, Kim greeted him. How are you feeling? Ready, General, Han replied. The team? All recovered enough to attend. Min insisted on being there despite medical recommendations. Han smiled slightly. She's stubborn. She's a Deathworlder, Nari said, using the term that had once been an insult but was now worn with pride. A communication officer called from across the room. General, the Valari diplomatic vessel has entered orbit. Supreme Commander Krex requests permission to begin descent. Kim looked at Han and Nari. This is it, the moment we've fought for. She turned to the officer. Permission granted. Direct them to landing pad 3. The meeting chamber had been specially prepared for this historic occasion. The gravity was slightly reduced to accommodate the Valari, though still stronger than they preferred. The temperature was set at a compromise between human and Valari comfort, leaving both sides slightly uncomfortable. General Kim sat at the center of the human delegation. Captain Han was on her right, Dr. Nari on her left. Several other military and civilian leaders completed their side of the large round table. Opposite them, empty chairs awaited the Valari representatives. The door opened, and Supreme Commander Krex entered, followed by 5 other Valari officials. They moved carefully, struggling somewhat with Mars gravity despite the adjustments. Kim didn't rise. This meeting was happening on human territory, and the psychological advantage was too important to surrender. Supreme Commander, she said as Krex took his seat. Welcome to Mars. Krex's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of stress in Valari body language that Dr. Nari had taught them to recognize. General Kim, Krex replied, we appreciate your willingness to meet. You requested this meeting, Kim reminded him. We're interested to hear what you have to say. Krex placed his hands flat on the table, another Valari gesture meant to show peaceful intentions. The conflict between our peoples has reached a point where continuation serves neither side, he said, carefully. The Valari High Council has authorized me to discuss terms for ending hostilities. Surrender? Han asked bluntly. Or peace? Krex turned his 4 eyes toward Han. Captain, I see you survived our hospitality. As humans tend to do, Han replied. Indeed. Krex looked back at General Kim. What we propose is not surrender, but a recognition of new realities. The Valari Confederacy has controlled this sector of the galaxy for centuries. No species has ever forced us to reconsider our approach to diplomacy or warfare, until now. Kim leaned forward slightly. What exactly are you proposing? Recognition of human territory, including Earth and its colonies. Non-aggression between our peoples. Eventually, perhaps integration of humanity into the galactic community. And in return? Nari asked. Assurances that humanity will not use its unique abilities against Valari interest in the future. The room was silent as the human delegation considered this. Finally, Kim spoke. Before we discuss terms, I want to be clear about why we're here. You didn't call this meeting because you've had a change of heart about Deathworlders. You called it because you're losing. Krex's skin flushed slightly, another tell Dr. Nari had identified. Our military position remains strong. We still control most of this solar system. On paper, perhaps, Han said. But your ships are withdrawing. Your soldiers are refusing orders. Your supply lines are breaking down. Isolated incidents, Krex insisted. Kim tapped a button, and a screen on the wall activated, showing footage from Valari ships. Officers arguing with superiors, crew members abandoning posts, supply vessels changing course away from combat zones. This is happening across your fleet, Kim said. Your soldiers have seen what humans can do and they're afraid, not just of our physical abilities, but of our adaptability, our endurance, our willingness to fight in conditions you consider impossible. Krex's composure slipped. You turned our own security systems against us. You made us see you as monsters. We showed you the truth, Nari corrected. This is what evolution on a death world creates, not monsters but survivors. Han tapped the table for attention. I've faced your soldiers in battle, Commander. They're brave when technology gives them the advantage. But they break when facing the unexpected, when plans fail, when conditions turn harsh. That's the real difference between our species. Krex was silent for a long moment. Perhaps, but if that is true, then the galaxy must adapt to this new reality. The rules of warfare and diplomacy that have governed the Confederacy for centuries must change. That's the first sensible thing you've said, Kim agreed. Let's talk about those new rules. The negotiations continued for days. The humans, now, in a position of psychological if not technological advantage, pressed for terms that would protect not just their own interests, but establish new principles for how species from different evolutionary backgrounds would interact. Dr. Nari presented evidence that humans were not unique in the galaxy. Other Deathworld species existed, but had been marginalized or contained by the dominant powers like the Valari. This information, gathered from the Valari's own databases during June's hacking operations, strengthened the human position. The final day, Kim presented Krex with a document titled the Deathworlder Accords. It outlined principles for interaction between species with different environmental tolerances and evolutionary histories. It guaranteed rights for all sentient beings regardless of their planet of origin. Most importantly, it rejected the idea that adapting to harsh conditions made a species dangerous or less civilized. Sign this, Kim said. And we have peace. Krex studied the document with all 4 eyes. This changes everything, not just for humans and Valari, but for the entire Confederacy. That's the point, Han said. The old rules didn't work. They led to this war. We need new ones. After consulting with his advisors, Krex pressed his hand to the document scanner, officially accepting the terms. The Valari Confederacy recognizes the Deathworlder Accords, he announced formally. Let this be the beginning of a new era. 6. Months later, Captain Han stood on the observation deck of a new vessel, the Unity. It was the first diplomatic ship built with both human and Valari technology. As Earth's new ambassador to the Valari Confederacy, he was preparing for his first official mission. Dr. Nari joined him at the viewport. "Having second thoughts?" she asked. Han shook his head, just remembering how all this started, with a misunderstanding about our differences. "And now those differences are protected by galactic law," Nari said with satisfaction. "The Accords have already led to 3 other Deathworld species making contact with the Confederacy. Did you ever imagine when we first met the Valari that we'd end up changing the rules for the entire galaxy?" Nari smiled. "That's what humans do, isn't it? We adapt, we survive, and we change the rules when they don't work for us." Han watched as Earth grew smaller behind them. The war had cost humanity dearly, but it had also earned them something precious: respect. Not just as equals, but as beings, whose very nature had forced an entire civilization to reconsider its fundamental assumptions. The Deathworlders had changed the rules of war, and in doing so, had created a path to lasting peace.